I was sitting in my office on a Friday night, sipping cold coffee and finishing up a project that could not wait until Monday. The building was quiet, just the hum of computers and the occasional footsteps in the hallway. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. 2 years after my divorce from Sarah, life was finally settling into a rhythm I could manage. The kids were with their mom for the week, and I had this rare moment to myself. Then my phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor. Leonard, why are your kids sitting on your front porch? It is getting dark. My heart stopped. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times, hoping I had misunderstood. I was not home. I had not picked them up. I did not even know they were there. Before I tell you what happened next and how this night changed everything, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you have ever dealt with a difficult co-parent or felt taken advantage of in a custody situation, hit that like button because you will understand exactly what I went through. And make sure to subscribe because this story gets intense and you will want to hear how I finally took control. Now let me take you back to where this all started. 2 years before that terrible Friday night, I sat across from Sarah at our kitchen table, signing divorce papers. We had been married for 8 years together for 10. The woman I fell in love with, the one who laughed at my terrible jokes and stayed up late talking about our dreams, had slowly disappeared after our kids were born. She became someone else, someone who cared more about her appearance, her social life, her freedom, than about the family we had built together. I will not lie and say the divorce was mutual. I fought for our marriage until there was nothing left to fight for. But when it was done, I focused on what mattered most, Jake and Emma. We agreed on 50-50 custody. 1 week with me, 1 week with her. I moved into a small 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from our old place. It was not much, just a ranch-style home with a fenced backyard and friendly neighbors, but it was ours. Mine and the kids. I painted Emma's room pale yellow because she loved sunshine. I put up superhero posters in Jake's room because he was obsessed with anything that involved saving the world. I learned to cook more than just spaghetti and chicken nuggets. I showed up to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every soccer game. Being a good father became my whole identity, and I was proud of that. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, was a godsend. She was a widow in her late 60s, who lived in the house to my right. She had grown kids of her own and grandchildren she did not see often enough. She took to Jake and Emma, immediately always having fresh-baked cookies ready when they got home from school on my weeks. She would wave from her porch when we left for school in the mornings, and she kept an eye on things when I was at work. I trusted her completely, and that trust would end up meaning everything. Sarah, on the other hand, moved into a fancy apartment downtown, the kind with a doorman and a gym on the first floor. She jumped back into dating almost immediately, posting photos on social media of herself at trendy restaurants and rooftop bars. I tried not to look, tried not to care, but it stung. Not because I still loved her, but because our kids were at home while she was out living like she was 22 again. The problem started small. About 3 months after we finalized the custody arrangement, Sarah called me on a Wednesday afternoon, her voice shaky and weak. "Leonard, I am so sick. I think it is the flu. I cannot take care of the kids right now. Can you pick them up early?" Of course I said yes. I left work, drove to her place, and brought Jake and Emma home. They seemed fine, not worried about their mom at all. 2 days later, I was scrolling through social media and saw Sarah's post from that same Wednesday, photos of her at a spa with the caption, "Much needed self-care day." My jaw clenched, but I let it go. Maybe she had felt better later. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Then it happened again. About a month later, she called on a Friday morning sounding frantic. "Leonard, I have an emergency at work. They need me to come in this weekend. Can you take the kids for an extra 2 days?" I agreed without hesitation. The kids came first always. But that Sunday, Jake accidentally mentioned that Mom had gone to the beach with her boyfriend. When I checked Sarah's Instagram there, they were beach photos with some guy I had never seen before, tagged from Saturday and Sunday. She had lied. Again. The third incident was the worst before that Friday night. Sarah was supposed to drop the kids off at 3 in the afternoon to start my week with them. At 6, she still had not shown up. I called her 4 times. No answer. Finally, at 6:30, her car pulled into my driveway. She barely said hello, just ushered the kids out with their bags and drove off. I was furious, but I swallowed it down because Jake and Emma were standing right there, confused and tired. Later that evening, I drove past the nail salon near my house and saw Sarah's car parked outside. She had been getting her nails done while I waited for my kids. Each time I told myself to let it go. I did not want to be that ex-husband, the one who nitpicked and complained. I wanted to coexist peacefully for the sake of Jake and Emma. They should not suffer because their mom is being selfish, I kept telling myself. But deep down, anger was building. I felt used, disrespected, and worst of all, I felt like Sarah saw me as nothing more than a backup plan, someone she could call whenever parenting interfered with her plans. That Friday, the one that changed everything, started like any other. It was Sarah's week with the kids, so I did not expect to see them until Sunday evening. That morning I got a text from her. "Hey, I might need to drop the kids off a bit early on Sunday. Work thing came up," I replied quickly. "How early?" Her response was vague. "I will let you know. Thanks." A small red flag went up in my mind, but I figured she meant a few hours early, maybe noon instead of 6. No big deal. I had a huge deadline at work that day, a software update that absolutely had to be finished by Monday morning. My boss had been breathing down my neck all week, so I planned to stay late and power through it. Around 5 in the afternoon, I texted Sarah, "Working late tonight. If you need anything, call me." She responded with a thumbs up emoji. That was it. I thought nothing of it. I assumed the kids were safe at her apartment, probably watching cartoons or playing games. I made myself another cup of coffee, turned up my music, and dove back into lines of code. At 8:47, my phone buzzed again. This time it was not Sarah. It was Mrs. Peterson. The message made my blood run cold. "Leonard, why are your kids sitting on your front porch? It is getting dark." Attached was a photo. There they were, Jake and Emma, sitting on the top step of my porch, their little backpacks beside them. Emma's face was turned down, and even in the dim light, I could see she had been crying. My hands started shaking. I immediately called Mrs. Peterson. She picked up on the first ring. "Leonard, thank God. I just came out to take the trash and saw them sitting there. They said their mom dropped them off and told them you would be home any minute." My stomach dropped like a stone. "Please," I said, my voice cracking, "can you stay with them? I am 45 minutes away." "Already ahead of you, dear," she said. "I brought them into my house. They are okay, just confused and cold. Emma has been crying, but Jake is trying to be brave. I will take care of them until you get here." I thanked her, my throat tight, and hung up. Then I tried calling Sarah, straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. A third time. Voicemail. I sent a text in all caps. "Where are you? Why are the kids at my house alone?" No response. I grabbed my jacket and ran to my car, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The drive home was the longest 45 minutes of my life. My mind raced with terrible possibilities. What if Mrs. Peterson had not been home? What if she had not noticed them? It was November, and the temperature had dropped to about 45 degrees. Jake was only 7. Emma was 5. They were babies. How could Sarah leave them like that? I kept trying to call her as I drove, but every call went to voicemail. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I thought about all the times I had excused her behavior, all the times I had convinced myself she was just adjusting to life after divorce. But this was different. This was not selfish. This was dangerous. This was neglect. When I finally pulled into my driveway at 9:35, Mrs. Peterson's porch light was on. I practically ran to her door and she opened it before I could even knock. Inside, Jake and Emma were sitting on her couch holding cups of hot chocolate. Emma's face was puffy and red from crying. When she saw me, she burst into tears all over again and ran into my arms. "Daddy," she sobbed, "I thought you forgot about us." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I scooped her up and held her tight, then reached out to pull Jake into the hug too. He was trying so hard to be strong, but I could see his eyes were red and glassy. "I am so sorry, baby girl," I whispered into Emma's hair. "I did not know you were there. I would never forget about you. Never." I looked at Mrs. Peterson over Emma's head, and she gave me a sad, knowing look. Once the kids calmed down a little, I asked Jake what had happened. He took a shaky breath and started talking. "Mom said we were going to your house for the weekend," he said. "She told us you would be home any minute. She rang the doorbell, but nobody answered. Then she said she had to go, that you were probably in the bathroom or something. She told us to wait on the porch." Emma sniffled and added, "I wanted to go back with Mom, but she said no. She said you were already expecting us." My chest tightened. "How long were you out there?" I asked gently. Jake looked down. "I do not know. A long time. It felt like forever." Mrs. Peterson spoke up quietly. "Leonard, I did not notice them until I took my trash out around 8:15. They could have been out there for half an hour or more. What if I had not gone outside? What if I had gone to bed early?" The thought made me feel sick. I checked their backpacks. A few changes of clothes, some stuffed animals, but no snacks, no note, nothing. Jake's phone, the old one I had given him for emergencies, was dead. He had tried to call me, but the battery had died. I looked at my kids, their scared faces, and something inside me snapped. I had been patient. I had been understanding. I had tried to co-parent peacefully. But this was the line Sarah had crossed, and there was no going back. After getting the kids settled at home, tucking them into their beds, and reassuring them over and over that they were safe, I sat alone in my kitchen. It was 10:30 at night, and I was shaking with a mix of fear and fury. I tried calling Sarah again. Voicemail. I sent another text. "Call me now, or I am calling the police." That got her attention. At 11:15, my phone rang. I answered immediately. Her voice was light, almost cheerful, with music and laughter in the background. "Hey, sorry I was at dinner. What is up? What is up?" I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. "You left our kids on my porch when I was not home." There was a pause. "Oh, relax, Leonard. I knew you would be back eventually." Eventually, Sarah, they sat outside for over an hour. In the cold, in the dark, Emma thought I had abandoned her. "Well," she said, her tone shifting to annoyance, "if you had been home like a responsible parent, this would not have been an issue." I could not believe what I was hearing. "It is your week," I said, my voice rising. "You were supposed to have them until Sunday." "Something came up," she said casually. "I had plans." Plans. What plans could possibly be more important than our children's safety? A date. Okay, I had a date. "I am allowed to have a life, Leonard." The words hung in the air. A date. She had left our 5-year-old daughter crying on a doorstep for a date. "You left our kids alone," I said, slowly, "for a date." "You are being dramatic," she snapped. "They are fine, are they not?" "No thanks to you," I shot back. "Mrs. Peterson found them. If she had not been home, they would have been out there all night." "Look, I have to go," Sarah said dismissively. "We will talk later." Then she hung up. I sat there in the darkness of my kitchen phone still in my hand and realized something. This would never stop unless I made it stop. Sarah would keep using me, keep putting her wants above our children's needs, keep doing whatever she wanted, because I had never stood up to her. Not really. I had always backed down, always chosen peace. But my kids deserved more than peace. They deserved safety. They deserved a parent who would fight for them. And that night I decided I was done being quiet. Saturday morning, I woke up early, even though I had barely slept. I checked on Jake and Emma, watching them sleep peacefully in their beds, and something hardened inside me. I had spent months trying to be the bigger person, trying to make co-parenting work despite Sarah's selfishness. But last night proved she was not just selfish. She was dangerous. I could not let this happen again. The first thing I did was check my doorbell camera. I had installed a Ring doorbell 6 months earlier, mostly for security, but I had never imagined I would need it for this. I pulled up the app and scrolled back to Friday night. The footage started at 7:52 in the evening. Sarah's silver sedan pulled up to my curb. She got out, opened the back door, and Jake and Emma climbed out with their backpacks. I watched as Sarah pointed toward my front door and said something I could not hear since the camera did not record audio at that distance. Jake nodded and took Emma's hand. They walked up to the porch together, and Sarah followed behind them. Sarah pressed the doorbell 3 times. I could see her checking her watch, then her phone. She glanced around, clearly annoyed that no one was answering. Then she turned back to the kids and said something else. Emma reached for Sarah's hand, and I could see her little mouth moving, probably asking to go back to Mom's place. But Sarah shook her head, firmly pointed at the porch steps, and patted Emma on the head. Then, without another glance back, Sarah walked to her car and drove away. My kids stood there for a moment, confused, before sitting down on the steps to wait. The timestamp showed 7:56. Mrs. Peterson had not found them until around 8:15. Nearly 20 minutes alone in the dark. I saved the video and emailed it to myself 3 times just to be safe. This was evidence. Clear, undeniable evidence of child endangerment. Then I walked next door to talk to Mrs. Peterson. She answered with a warm smile, but her eyes were serious. "Leonard, how are the children?" "They are okay," I said. "Still shaken up, but okay. Thanks to you." She waved a hand. "I am just glad I was home." She invited me in for coffee, and I explained what I was planning to do. "I'm going to file for emergency custody," I told her. "I cannot let this happen again." Mrs. Peterson nodded firmly. "You are doing the right thing. Those babies need stability, and their mother clearly cannot provide it." "Would you be willing to write a statement about what you saw last night?" I asked. "Of course," she said without hesitation. "I will write down everything." Later that morning, I sat Jake down for a difficult conversation. I did not want to scare him or make him feel like he was betraying his mother, but I needed to know the truth. "Buddy," I said gently, "has Mom ever left you and Emma alone like that?" Before Jake hesitated, looking down at his hands. He was a smart kid, and I could see him wrestling with whether to tell me. Finally, he nodded. "Sometimes when we are at her place," he said quietly, "she leaves us alone for a few hours. She says we are old enough to watch TV by ourselves." My heart sank. "How often?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Jake shrugged. "I do not know. A few times. Last month she left us alone at night to go out." "What time?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "It was late, like after our bedtime. We were supposed to be asleep, but I stayed up because I was scared. I felt like someone had poured ice water down my back." Sarah had been leaving 2 young children home alone at night. I thanked Jake, told him he had done nothing wrong, and that I was proud of him for being honest. Then I wrote down everything he had said, making sure to note dates as best as I could remember them. By the end of Saturday, I had a file folder full of evidence. The doorbell camera footage, Mrs. Peterson's written statement, my notes from Jake's conversation, screenshots of Sarah's social media posts, showing her out at bars and restaurants during times she was supposed to be caring for the kids. Records of all the times she had dropped them off early or picked them up late without notice. It was damning. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and made an emergency appointment with a family lawyer. I had never hired a lawyer before, and I did not know where to start, but a coworker had recommended someone a few months back when I had mentioned my custody struggles. Her name was Catherine Martinez, and she had a reputation for being tough but fair. Her office was downtown in a modern building with glass walls and expensive furniture. I felt out of place in my jeans and polo shirt, but Catherine made me feel comfortable right away. She was in her 40s, sharply dressed, with kind eyes that turned steely when I started explaining what had happened. I laid out everything. The pattern of Sarah dumping the kids on me at the last minute, the lies about being sick or having work emergencies, the Friday night incident. I showed her the doorbell footage, and I watched her expression harden as she saw my children sitting alone in the dark. When the video ended, Catherine sat back in her chair and folded her hands. "This is child endangerment, Leonard. Clear cut. You have grounds for an emergency custody modification." She explained the process. We would file an emergency motion for temporary full custody, asking the court to place the children with me immediately while the case was being reviewed. We would also request that Child Protective Services conduct an investigation into Sarah's care of the children. If everything went well, we would push for primary custody with Sarah only getting supervised visitation until she could prove she was capable of responsible parenting. "How much will this cost?" I asked already, knowing the answer would not be cheap. Catherine named a figure that made me wince, but I did not hesitate. "Whatever it takes," I said firmly. "My kid's safety is not negotiable." She smiled. "That is exactly what I needed to hear. Let us get started." By the end of the day, Monday, the paperwork was filed. Catherine warned me that Sarah would not take this well, and she was right. That evening, Sarah called me, her voice sharp with anger. "What the hell, Leonard?" she snapped. "You filed for custody. Are you insane?" I kept my voice calm. "You endangered our children. Sarah, I have evidence." "You cannot just take my kids away from me," she said, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "I am their mother, and I am their father," I replied. "A father who does not leave them alone on porches in the dark." "You are going to regret this," she hissed. "My lawyer will destroy you." "Good luck with that," I said. "You will be hearing from my attorney. And Sarah, do not contact me unless it is through legal counsel." I hung up and immediately blocked her number. It felt like cutting a chain that had been weighing me down for 2 years. The next 2 weeks were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and sleepless nights. Jake and Emma stayed with me the entire time, since the court had issued a temporary order, placing them in my care pending the hearing. I did not tell them much about what was happening, just that there were some grown-up things Mom and Dad needed to work out. Emma asked when she would see Mommy again, and I told her soon, trying to keep my voice gentle. I did not want my kids to feel caught in the middle, but I also refused to lie to them anymore. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks after I filed. On the day of the hearing, I put on my best suit, the one I had worn to my sister's wedding 3 years ago. Catherine met me outside the courtroom, looking confident and professional. Sarah arrived with her lawyer, a man in an expensive suit, who looked like he charged by the minute. Sarah was dressed conservatively, probably trying to look like a responsible mother. But I could see the anger in her eyes when she looked at me. The hearing began, and Catherine wasted no time. She presented the doorbell footage first, and I watched the judge's face as she saw my children being abandoned. The judge, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward to watch the video closely. When it ended, she looked at Sarah with an expression I could not quite read. Then Mrs. Peterson was called to testify. She walked to the stand with quiet dignity and told the court exactly what she had seen. Those babies were terrified. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady. "The little girl was crying, and the boy was trying so hard to be brave. If I had not taken my trash out that night, I do not know what would have happened to them." Next, it was my turn. I walked to the stand, my legs feeling weak, and Catherine asked me to explain what had happened. I told the story from the beginning, my voice shaking with emotion. I talked about the months of Sarah using me as a backup babysitter, the lies, the pattern of neglect. I talked about that Friday night, about the terror I felt when I realized my kids were alone. I looked directly at the judge and said, "I do not want to keep their mother away from them, Your Honor. But I cannot stand by and watch my children be treated like inconveniences. They deserve better. They deserve safety." Sarah's lawyer tried to downplay everything. He argued that it was a one-time mistake, that Sarah was a devoted mother who had simply made an error in judgment. Then Sarah took the stand. She cried, apologized, and said she thought I would be home. But when Catherine cross-examined her, the cracks started to show. "You did not call to confirm Leonard was home, did you, Miss Sarah?" Catherine asked. "No, but I assumed," Sarah started. "You assumed," Catherine interrupted. "And when Leonard tried to reach you for hours after discovering your children were abandoned, you did not answer your phone, correct?" "I was out," Sarah said defensively. "On a date," Catherine stated. While your children sat in the cold and dark, Sarah could not answer that. The judge took a short recess, and when she returned, her face was stern. "This court takes child endangerment very seriously," she began. "Miss Sarah, your actions on that Friday night showed a reckless disregard for your children's safety and well-being. The temporary order was extended. I was granted temporary primary custody of Jake and Emma. Sarah was allowed supervised visitation only twice a week for 2 hours each session. A full custody hearing would be scheduled in 3 months. When the gavel came down, I felt like I could finally breathe again. I had done it. I had stood up for my kids, and the court had listened. The first few weeks after the hearing were an adjustment for everyone. Jake and Emma were confused about why they could not go back to their mom's place, why they only saw her for short visits at a supervised center, with a social worker present. I tried to explain it gently. Mommy made some choices that were not safe, I told them. But you will still see her just a little differently for now. And you are always going to be safe with me. Always. Emma asked a lot of questions at first. Why can we not sleep at Mommy's house? When can we go back? Is Mommy mad at us? Each question broke my heart a little, but I answered honestly, without putting Sarah down. This is not your fault, I told them, over and over. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard decisions to keep kids safe. Slowly, life began to settle into a new routine. Mornings became special. I started making pancakes every Saturday, and the kids would help me flip them giggling when batter splattered on the counter. We went to the park every Sunday afternoon, rain or shine. Jake joined a soccer league, and I coached his team even though I barely knew the rules. Emma started taking dance classes, and I sat through every recital recording videos on my phone like the proud dad I was. At night, after homework and dinner, we read stories together. The kids got to pick the books, and we snuggled on the couch with blankets and hot chocolate. Mrs. Peterson became like a grandmother to Jake and Emma. She watched them after school on days when I had to work late, and she never asked for anything in return. She taught Emma how to bake cookies, and showed Jake how to plant vegetables in her garden. The kids adored her, and I was grateful every single day that she had been there that Friday night. Without her, I do not even want to think about what could have happened. The supervised visits with Sarah were awkward and tense. I dropped the kids off at the family center and waited in my car until it was time to pick them up. Through the windows, I could see Sarah trying to play with the kids, but it always looked forced. She spent most of the time on her phone, only half paying attention. After the first few visits, Jake started asking if he had to go. Emma stopped asking when she could stay with Mommy overnight. It hurt to see, but it also confirmed what I already knew. Sarah was not ready to put her children first. 3 months later, we were back in court for the full custody hearing. Sarah had completed a mandatory parenting class as ordered by the judge, but her behavior had not changed. Catherine presented evidence that Sarah had missed 3 out of 12 scheduled supervised visits, claiming she had other commitments. When she did show up, the social worker's reports noted that she was often distracted, checking her phone frequently and cutting visits short. Jake and Emma had also been seeing a child therapist, and while their sessions were confidential, the therapist provided a general statement to the court that the children felt more secure and stable in my home. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that she deserved another chance, that she had learned from her mistakes and was ready to co-parent responsibly. But the evidence was overwhelming. The judge listened to both sides, reviewed all the documentation, and made her decision. Leonard Martinez will retain primary physical custody of both children, she announced. Sarah Martinez will have visitation rights unsupervised, but limited to 1 weekend per month and 1 evening per week. If there are any further incidents of neglect or endangerment, those visitation rights will be revoked immediately. I did not feel triumphant when I walked out of that courtroom. There was no sense of victory, no desire to gloat. I just felt relief. Deep, overwhelming relief. My kids were safe. They were staying with me. I had done what I needed to do, and it had worked. That evening, I sat Jake and Emma down and explained the judge's decision in simple terms. You are going to live with me all the time now, I said. You will still see Mommy sometimes, but this is your home. Emma nodded, not looking upset at all. Okay, Daddy, she said. Jake looked at me seriously. Are we safe now? He asked. Yes, buddy, I said, pulling him into a hug. You are safe, I promise. 1 year later, I look back on that Friday night and realize it was the turning point. Life is not perfect. Sarah and I still have a strained relationship, communicating only when necessary about the kids. But she has been showing up for her scheduled visits, and there have been no more incidents. Sometimes I see glimpses of the woman she used to be when she is with Jake and Emma, Moments where she seems genuinely present and caring. I do not know if she will ever fully change, but I hope for the kids' sake that she tries. Jake is thriving in school now, making friends and excelling in math. Emma is more confident and outgoing, no longer waking up with nightmares about being left alone. They talk about the night on the porch, sometimes usually when something reminds them of it, but it does not scare them anymore. It is just a story about a hard time that we got through together. Mrs. Peterson is still a huge part of our lives. She comes over for dinner once a week, and the kids made her a Grandmother's Day card last year that she cried over. She tells me often that she is proud of me, and I tell her I could not have done it without her. As for me, I learned something important through all of this. I learned that being a good parent sometimes means being uncomfortable. It means standing up and fighting, even when it is easier to stay quiet. It means putting your children's needs above everything else, including your desire to avoid conflict. For so long, I had convinced myself that keeping the peace was the right thing to do. But peace at the cost of my children's safety was not peace at all. It was cowardice, disguised as compromise. That Friday night changed everything. I could have continued to let Sarah take advantage of me. I could have stayed silent to keep things calm. But I did not, and because of that, my kids are safe. They know that their dad will always fight for them, always protect them, always put them first. That is the legacy I want to leave them, not a memory of a father who was too afraid to stand up when it mattered most. If you are in a similar situation, if you are dealing with a co-parent who takes advantage of you or puts your children at risk, please hear me when I say this. Document everything. Keep records, take screenshots, save videos, speak up. Do not be afraid to get lawyers involved if necessary. Your children's well-being is not something you should ever have to negotiate or compromise on. It is not about winning or losing. It is about keeping the people you love safe. I will not lie and say the legal battle was easy or cheap. It was not. It drained my savings and caused me countless sleepless nights. But every time I see Jake and Emma happy and secure, every time they hug me and say, "I love you, Dad," I know it was worth it. Every single penny, every single moment of stress, every single hard decision was worth it because they are safe. And that is all that matters. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. When it comes to protecting those you love, you do whatever it takes. Even if it means fighting the person you once promised forever to. Even if it means standing alone in a courtroom, laying your life bare for a judge to examine. Even if it means being the bad guy in someone else's story. Because at the end of the day, your children's safety and happiness are worth more than anyone's opinion of you, including your ex's. So, let me ask you, have you ever had to stand up to a co-parent or fight for what was right for your kids? Drop a comment below and share your story, because I know I am not alone in this. If this story resonated with you, or if you think someone else needs to hear it, smash that like button and share this video. And please subscribe to the channel because I will keep sharing real stories about real struggles and how we overcome them. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of this community. I wish you strength, courage, and the wisdom to always put your children first. Take care of yourselves and each other.